Where were we? Yeah, so...
Oh, how long I was involved?
Yeah, and there are, 2 ways to be involved.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've done those 2 things. Part of me getting involved was just simply... I think it was prior to the... Oh, gosh, I guess it's longer than that now, because it was prior to the election.
Wow.
The last presidential election. And I've been a bit of a political junkie, listened to a lot of talk radio and stuff like that. And God, I'm not despairing, but didn't want to fall into despair. And so this was a way to be politically active in a way to bring democracy to the workplace, which is, how I see what unions are. And there was a lecture I listened to by Noam Chomsky, and I wish I could tell you which one it was. I'm sure you could find any number of his. But he talks about how the university used to be structured such that the governance came from within the professor, and then it moved through administration, and you went back to the professorate, and that kind of thing. And he's also talking about this, we're talking 50s, 60s, 70s, something like that. And then we saw that the move towards kind of a more corporate or business model being imposed, and so that you have more of a administrative class that may or may not have much, classroom and instruction kind of time or research time. And that's not necessarily always the case, but seeing that kind of imbalance and believing I want to be active in some way that is meaningful, not getting involved in local politics, but like at the city council or state or anything like that. And so that was my motivation, was a move to do something that I thought would be meaningful to keep me sane.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So what goes on during these meetings? It seems like you've been having them for a long time.
Yeah.
It's what exactly happens?
Think of any organizing meeting that you would have, probably a pitch meeting or something like that. You want to pitch stories, okay, and we'll report the numbers of where we're at, how many contacts we have, different strategies to try and communicate with folks that we haven't reached out to. Saying oh gosh, you've been having these for a long time, and so what are you doing, kind of thing. I mean,
I just don't really know what.
Oh, for sure, no, because that's a fair question that even people who might have heard, other adjunct folks who might have heard of something going on but not sure. It's a slow. I like to tell folks that, part of me getting involved is planting seeds for trees that I may never, yield the fruit from for myself.
Okay.
Because it's the right thing to do. So that whole idea, these meetings seem slow, tedious. God, what are we doing? Are we, but considering that to organize, and it's not just the main campus here. We're also talking the satellite campuses as well. So the let alone the geographic dispersion of part-time folks. It's also that we're here at different times in different buildings at different places, and so the campaign to organize people is simply ask, hey, would you support a union? Is that something you think would benefit you? And what are the issues in your jobs that you would like to see? And again, that's typically direct compensation, benefits, and security. And those change in terms of their hierarchy. So the meetings are, an hour and a half, reporting on what our numbers have been, what have different people been finding from their talks, how are our numbers looking, what's the next outreach activity we're going to try and do, and how many more visits, and all right, we'll see you next month. So if that makes sense. I mean, they're pretty boring. I mean, but like within any meetings, like in class, you think of the time when things take a lull and everybody, wants to whinge about work or the day, and then back on track and, okay, what are we going to do?
Okay.
Does that help make sense
Yeah.
to, like, what they are?
So, have you been aware of any reaction from the university or anything like that?
Not directly. I mean, again, living in we have plenty of friends. My wife and daughter, we live here in town, and we've made friends with folks who are full time and tenure and non-tenure track, and everybody's supportive. From that realm, I don't know people from administration directly, so I haven't heard.
Okay. And you don't know of, like, the organization, like, I guess maybe this is a question for Jesse.
Sure. Yeah.
But, like, what kind of communications with those who, I guess, let me rephrase.
Yeah, sure.
Are the adjuncts unionizing? Like, and what is that process like? Like, when do you decide?
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay.
To be a
so
union?
Sure, and this is part of the process. Lay out like that idea of getting it, like democracy anywhere. Like, you all have to agree. Okay, this is something we want to do, and then we go to administration and say, okay, this is we've selected the United Steelworkers to represent us as a union. Here's a list of demands. What do you think?
Okay.
Now, that covers over or leaves out really what the campaign is to go around and ask people, like, on a scale of 1 to 4, what do you think?
Yeah.
But first asking folks, again, are there things about your working condition that you would like to see better?
Yeah.
And we don't want to go in with like half. We're talking 1,500. Numbers are. Again, it fluctuates over time, but it's hovered as high as. God, I can't be right. I've seen numbers that we're trying to organize at what we call the bargaining unit, as high as 1,400.
Okay.
Maybe, and Jesse can give you clearer numbers on this. So we're trying to go around and get well over 80% of that 1,400 to know where. Ideally, you would poll everybody, right? If you believe that unionization is democracy in the workplace, you wouldn't want to take a minority of the people and say we want a union without asking everybody else.
Okay.
So that's really why and sometimes when we meet people, they're like, I've heard something in the past and now I haven't heard anything. And it's difficult because you're going around to the 7 different campuses, or was it 1, 2, 3, or 8 different campuses, all the different buildings at all the different times, trying to find people that are like in and out of their office. They're maybe going to another job on another campus somewhere. They got kids to take care of, or they got another job off campus somewhere else to go to.
So this going around is just going to people on the campuses, adjuncts on the campuses.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And kind of seeing where they stand.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you say that the movement is in that stage?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say, again, if this is a question for Jesse, let me know.
Yeah.
When you say you choose the United Steelworkers to represent you as a union, does that mean like you form a union within like a sub-union, or you just like join their...
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the idea, like they're like United Steel or SEIU, which would be the Service Employees International, or the longshoremen, or for these. They're an entity that negotiates for everybody who's come together, if that makes sense. It's like, as much as the administration is made up of different offices, right? So the union is all of the people, all the adjuncts, a union of people together, and then the United Steelworkers is the organization body that has the kind of power to go and say, okay, we're gonna. But the power is derived from everybody going, yeah, we want to belong with these guys. I mean, and we could have, it could turn out in the future that democratically we form committees within all the adjuncts saying, okay, maybe we want to be represented by some other union. Does that help make sense for, like, because I see you're trying to figure out how do these entities all exist with one another and what.
Makes more sense.
Okay.
But I can also research and talk to Jesse. But,
and he's got a much. I mean, in terms of labor history and that, that will be a better answered by him, I think. Yes.
Okay. Then maybe could you just talk me through a time or just a general overview of how, for you, the adjuncts are treated, and your experience with that? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean by who?
I guess who is mistreating the adjuncts?
Right, or what's the characterization of the mistreatment?
Yeah, exactly. What's an example or an instance?
I mean, one example is just simply the pay, and this is a research project I'd love to do. Would be to look at different professional organizations. So, as an English instructor for writing, I might belong to a handful of different professional organizations like NCTE, which is the National Council of Teachers of English, and that would be like belonging to the Washington Press Reporters Club, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense in terms of? So it's a voluntary kind of thing, but they would also set kind of guidelines. There'd be kind of decorum guidelines if you're going to be in the White House doing a report. This is how you have to do it, right? This is how you should ask questions. Saying something about the working conditions that you should abide by. Similarly, NCTE or others, like I picked up one from Communications Department. They have kind of guidelines about what. Well, that's what I'm curious is, do all of them have guidelines of what somebody ought to be paid, say per unit kind of thing, or for example, like a 3-unit class. Our professional organization recommends that somebody's paid roughly, consider like a 3-unit course, which is kind of a standard, full semester length course, should make something like 10 grand a year.
Okay. By
their recommendations. We make 3.
Okay. Wait, just to clarify, who's they?
The professional organization, NCTE.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a recommendation. It's like saying
for professionals like you.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that's just a basic form of mistreatment. Period. It's not like a form of harassment as such. It's not you feel shitty going to work or something like that. It's that you're being exploited for what you're. I mean, God, you're going into journalism. I mean, think of, and you want to go print, I suppose.
Print, magazine.
Right.
Somewhere in there.
So I mean, even within that world, there's a great deal of unionization happening in the internet side of things, with the writers guilds in different areas. So it's a very similar kind of thing where. Think of the analogy is that adjuncts are like freelance writers. With some quasi guarantees, but there's that sense that I've got the class ready, or like this happened to me where like right now my understanding is that the full-timers are and the tenure track folks are in contract negotiations with administration. As a consequence of that negotiation, a totally different union, totally different, we all do the same work, or roughly similar work. They raised caps on writing classes in particular, or they're suggesting that caps ought to be raised from